So I believe that with the right skills, each of you can have just as much success. It was priced at $500,000. It was on the market for 42 days. It's the same square footage as yours, and it sold for $450,000. If we get multiple offers, then we get an opportunity to negotiate from a position of strength. How many agents that we communicated with through the MLS. So now that we've seen this information, having reviewed the information in terms of what's available for sale in the market, their price, features, and condition, and what has sold recently, their price, features, and condition. So the first thing that I'd like to do is I want to start off just by saying thank you. We all have busy lives, right? We all have commitments. We all have to be places. So for you to be willing to come and take some time out of your busy schedule and your day, it's evidence of your desire to succeed and to grow yourselves and your business. So it means a lot because you're affording me the opportunity to learn also. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I know some of you I know really well. Some of you I just met today. And you don't know me, but if you really knew me, really knew me, you would know that in 2019, I was about 17 years into the real estate business, and my passion for selling real estate started to wane, is what I observed. Have you ever experienced that? Any of you experienced that? It happens, right? It happens. And so here I was selling about 80 homes a year, and I wasn't happy, right? How is that possible? And yet it happens. And so my coach at the time, Aaron Novello, he was selling about 200 homes a year. 80% of those were listings. He asked me two very important questions that changed my perspective and brought back my passion for selling real estate. And he asked, when you are working with your clients, what is your intention, Mark? He said, is it to take or is it to give? Is it to seek to understand, or is it to be right? Now, those are pretty basic questions, right? And yet, when he asked me those questions, they seemed really complicated. And it made me feel uneasy and uncomfortable. And what I discovered was that discomfort that I felt internally came from a truth that I'm not proud of. I was looking at people, or my clients, for what I could get from them versus how I could serve them at the highest level. And that is an opposing intention. That creates discord. Does that make sense? So without me realizing it, this opposing intention, it caused me to not feel worthy enough to speak the truth to my clients. It caused me to not feel worthy enough to ask for a price reduction. So I was more focused and too attached to the outcome and what was happening for me. So what I did is I spent the next 4 years being coached by Aaron and really focusing and getting very good at asking the right questions to guide sellers to self-discover the right market price so that they could be successful and also not be, that I wouldn't have to be attached to the outcome. And it made a significant difference. So now, I no longer feel uneasy asking for price reductions. And my intention is to tell the truth and not to be attached to the outcome. And it changed my experience in real estate. This has caused my listings to going under contract to go from 80% to 100%. That means last year I listed 44 homes and minimally 44 of them sold. If not, we received the buyer opportunity. Of course, anywhere between 2 and 5 opportunities from every listing that we receive. But it took me to recognize internally where I needed to shift because it's an internal game, right? Our world out here is really just a projection of what's happening in here. It took me going there for me to get to that place. So I believe that with the right skills, each of you can have just as much success. In fact, I know some of you are already doing it. Guiding your sellers to self-discover the correct market price so that all of your listings can sell. Now, over the last 22 years, I've had the privilege to help 1,200 families move and sell, and I've helped hundreds of agents just like you become successful at this. So the key right now is how can we guarantee that all of our listings are going to sell? That's the point and the intention for today. So the question that I would have for all of us is, are we educating our sellers, and are we using a presentation that's coming from a self-discovery platform? Or are we the all-knowing CMA presenters, and are we doing it from authority? So what do I mean by authority? A little while back, or actually a long time back, one of my first mentors in the business, he said, you have to come from authority because you have to control the situation. You notice I took a deep breath on that because I actually had to evolve away from that. And this is what authority might sound like. I study homes and prices every day. Therefore, I assume that you will list your home with me at a price that will cause it to sell. Now, who is that about?
You.
It's about me. That's not about the client. And quite frankly, you know, in our new world, or in our world of the internet, you know, people are educated. Most people know what their home might be able to sell for even before we get to their house. It's like when we go to see a doctor and we're having a challenge, we get on Google and chances are we've diagnosed ourselves at least a couple, 3 times before we even see the doctor, right? So everyone has access to the same information. And coming from that approach of authoritative, it really doesn't serve the client, and it certainly doesn't serve us. So the opposite would be a self-discovery, don't tell, ask the seller presentation. And that might sound like this. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if you were going to purchase this home all over again, after reviewing the homes that we're about to review in terms of what's available for sale that you can purchase today, their condition, features, and price, and also what's sold in the last 6 months, their condition, features, and price, the question to be asking yourself is, if you were buying your home all over again, where would you feel comfortable making an offer on your home that would be reflective of fair market value? What's the key word there?
Fair market value.
Fair. What that means is I've just set the stage. We're about to go through the market analysis, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, and this is what we're looking for. And once you say the word fair, it sends their brain on a mission. And that mission is to be fair, right? So there's little nuances that we can do to get them prepped to receive the information that we're about to share with them. Does that make sense? And then, yes, Bruce?
I just wanted you to say that one more time for me. Knowing what you know now.
Yes. So, okay, if you were going to purchase this home all over again, having reviewed the information that we're about to review in terms of what's available for sale, their condition, features, and price, and what's sold in the last 6 months, their condition, features, and price, where would you feel comfortable making an offer on your home that you believe would be reflective of fair market value? We don't tell, we ask. And what we want to ask each seller on each comparable is, let me ask you this. How many of you, when you're doing and you're presenting a market analysis, what do you present from? Do you use like your tablet? Do you use paper? What does it look like these days?
Paper. Yeah, mostly
Paper?
paper.
Paper?
I bring a tablet in case I would need to show them more
Okay.
in-depth pictures when they, if they push back.
Okay.
Okay, well mine has a pool. Okay, well theirs has papers and a screen and
Summer
like,
kitchen.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to differentiate a little bit.
Because we might need to get to pictures,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that's part of the CMA presentation. Tony, what are you using?
Well, I send them my version of CMA ahead of time in
Okay.
PDF. So if they really want to print it, they can. I
Okay.
bring my computer with me and I sit down with them and I actually ask them to pull it up. So we're actually looking at it at the same time, going over all the details together.
Okay. Now, when you ask them to bring it up,
Mhm.
are you bringing it up in your computer?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
All right, good.
We're looking at the same thing at the same time.
That's perfect.
Yes.
And nowadays, we have to get used to that, and why? What's changed in our industry since 2020?
Everything's online.
And are we doing seller appointments on Zoom also?
Mhm.
How many of you are doing seller appointments on Zoom?
No, mine
Something-
are all in person. I mean, more so when it was during COVID
Yeah.
than then.
Okay.
After now, people want to meet in person, in my experience. I don't know what other people.
I do.
Bruce?
Yeah.
So are you saying to use their computer or use your computer?
No, I bring my tablet.
Okay.
And my suggestion is,
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking at our room. Many people right now, it's all about technology. And if we don't show up and if we don't have technology, that could be a reflection on us, and especially if we're competing with other agents. And they step in and they got an iPad and everything is,
Yeah.
it's what people are used to now. Paper is a little old. I brought some paper today, but I don't typically use it. I just brought it for an example. Okay, so my point is this: when we're going through the CMA, if my suggestion would be that we are using a tablet or we are using our computer that we're bringing it with, because then we can get into the pictures, and that's going to be important because there's two parts to the CMA when we go through it. The first part are the numbers, and the second part is condition, right? So the first part is I will always present, I'll have the broker synopsis open. And now, this was not easy for me to get used to, but my most recent coach has always said, when you're presenting, he said, we're not telling them the information. So in other words, here's my tablet. It's not, you see what this one went on the market on August 10th. It was priced at $500,000. It was on the market for 42 days. It's the same square footage as yours, and it sold for $450,000. Now, when we're telling people, is information received as much as when we're asking them questions? I'm seeing, okay, good, you guys get it. And why? Because questions are engaging. Does that make sense?
Well, sometimes you need them to discover it themselves. So what I do with the paper is I'll say, okay, so what do you see the similarities and differences are between your houses? Like
Yes.
between these comps and your house.
That's
So
it.
if I'm just pointing it out, they're not going to absorb it as much as them investing and looking at
You're
it.
exactly correct.
If I may share,
Yes.
I believe people don't like to be spoken to, they like to be spoken with.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's why there's a lot of, even when you're texting and emailing, stuff like that, in my opinion, I found out it's not, hey, thanks for doing it, or to this, it's always with this.
Yeah.
You're right.
So you're combining everybody together. It's like with the listings, I don't go in there and tell people what they need to know, because I found out if I engage them early and they allow themselves to become part of our conversation, then it's a lot easier.
Otherwise, if we're telling, it's a lot of this.
Yes.
So it might sound, an example of that might sound like this. And this is, to me, it was counterintuitive. And that's why I'm sharing it with you guys, because to me, I was like, oh, I can't do that. And as I changed and shifted, it really made a difference in my presentation. So instead of the telling like I just did, it would be, now we've got the information right in front of us. So it's counterintuitive, and my brain was like, why are you asking them when it's right there? Because we have to. They have to self-discover the information. So it would be kind of like this. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you can see this one, and I'll point to it with my pen. When did this go on the market? And then they say it. What price were they asking? And then they say it, not me. They're self-discovering. They're speaking it. So when someone speaks it, they believe it, right? How many days was it on the market? They say it, not me. And how many square feet is it? They say it. How many bedrooms? How many baths? Did it have a pool? And what price did it end up selling at? Now they've just said it all, which means they believe it because they spoke it. Does that make sense?
Of course.
The next thing, and another suggestion that I have is, as you're going through each comparable and you're going through the pictures, you'll want to take a little time, and after you've gone through the pictures, and you're going to ask them 3 questions. Would you say that this home is similar to yours, not as nice, or nicer? And then on each and every single comp, you're going to make note right next to it. Like I'll have my note right here, and I'll write right next to the comp, I'll put nicer, not as nice. And then that way, when we go back at the end, which is when we're going to ask them, so we're going to ask the same question. So now that we've seen this information, having reviewed the information in terms of what's available for sale in the market, their price, features, and condition, and what has sold recently, their price, features, and condition. Now that you've seen it, what price do you feel would be a fair value that you would feel comfortable making an offer on your home? And then they're gonna tell you a number. But when you ask that question, we have to what?
Keep quiet.
We have to be completely quiet and we say nothing. And we just wait. And it might seem like hours, but you have to let them speak. And they might even say, you want me to come up with the number? And I said, based on what you've seen, what do you think? Yes. Because we want them to speak first. Now, if they give us a number and that number is in a fair slot, at that point, then we're just going to move on and we're going to close. We're going to say, great, would you be open to listing your home for $500,000? And then they're going to say yes or no, or they need more information. If they give us a number that's out of the slot, you guys will recognize this. This is the grid from the MLS. It's all it is. And I've created a grid with just only what you need. And you'll see. And then I'll say to the client, I'll say, by the way, I've done a little bit of math for us. You can see the math. I'll say, and this is only the solds. So you can see the high, average, and low. So, and then I'll ask the question. So now that you've seen these prices, where do you feel comfortable making an offer that you believe would be reflective of fair market value? And now they're looking at this and they're staring at it. And this is real, right? And then they're going to say, well, and now it's got to be fair. And I can't tell you how many times I will hear, well, our house doesn't have the kitchen. Our house doesn't have a pool. I guess we would have to be somewhere between low and average. And you just hear it, and then they commit to a number. If they commit to a number that you feel is correct or fair for the market, then like I said, then you just go, would you consider listing your home for that price today? And if they say yes, great. Can we get started on the paperwork? Great, and then you list it. If they say a number that's not in the slot or something that you feel comfortable with or that's right for the market, then you're going to say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, my job is never to get you to do something that you don't want to do. My job is to help you. Here's the 2 strategies in pricing your home in today's market. May share them with you. So the first strategy is we're going to price it right at market price. And typically what happens when we price right at market price, buyers are driven to us. And what that means is we get more showings. More showings equals more interested buyers. The more interested buyers means the greater chance that we will have possible multiple offers. If we get multiple offers, then we get an opportunity to negotiate from a position of strength. And I remember you saying that you wanted to get to Philadelphia because your daughter's having a baby at the beginning of April. So if we use this strategy, I know for certain that you're going to get there on time for your grandchild being born. Now, what did I just do there? I wove their where, when, and why, what's important to them, into the close. So that's one of the choices, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. The other option is we can price it. Yes, Bruce.
Well, I just wanted to ask you, because you said something and you went to their motivation. At what point in your presentation did you discover their motivation? Because you didn't talk about that early in the presentation. Is this something that you're discovering right away in your initial conversations with them?
It would have been discovered before I even came out to see them.
Got it.
It would have been discovered in the prequel script. We would do 100%, and that actually I've done classes on prequel. I'll be doing another one at some point, but thank you for asking that. We would know all of that even well before we got to here because we need to know if this is a viable seller for us. Thank you, Bruce. Good question. So then the second strategy, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is we price beyond market. And some sellers like to do that because they like to leave a little room for negotiating. The only challenge that I see that happens with that is we have fewer showings. When we have fewer showings, we have fewer interested buyers. And when we have fewer interested buyers, that equals longer days on market. And when your home is on the market more days than what's typical, we get concerning questions from buyers. What questions do you think buyers begin to ask? What's wrong with the property? Or is that property overpriced? And then when that happens, we usually, either the buyers won't come out and see us at all, or we end up being used as the pivot house. Do you know what the pivot house is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? Well, no, I don't. Well, I've been in listings when this has happened, and I can hear an agent say this right now in my ear. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, if you like this home at this price, wait until you see the next home that I show you. And guess what? That home, all it does is get used to sell the competition. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you shared with me that Philadelphia is the goal by the beginning of April because that new grandbaby of yours is going to be born. Based on the timing and how this work out, which strategy do you think we should use? And then?
The first one.
The first one. I think that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. So my suggestion would be that we price, the closer that we can close price to the average number is the sooner that you're going to actually have more activity and we're going to get you to Philadelphia. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now after the close, we've closed them on the price and they've agreed to it. How many of you have experienced this? Well, Mark, if I price it at that price, how much time will it take to sell the house? How long do you think it'll take? I'm sure you guys have gotten that question next. It usually comes next. So then, we need to set expectations up front. And this is for the listing process. So we need to set expectations up front. And what I'd share is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, here's the good news. This is not going to be a long, drawn-out guessing game to getting you to Philadelphia. We're going to know within the first 2 to 4 weeks of you being on the market. And the market speaks to us typically in one of 3 ways. And in the 22 years, fill in the blank of however long, 9 years that I've been selling real estate, I've proven this time and time again. So the first way the market speaks to us is it brings us an offer, which is what we want, right? Now, typically for us to get an offer, we have to have 6 to 8 showings in a 30-day window for that to happen. Now the second way that the market speaks to us is we have those 6 to 8 showings, and yet we don't have an offer. And that's usually in about a 3 to 4 week period. When we don't have that offer, the market is telling us that we're 5% high, and when we make that reduction, you get offers, which is what you want, right? Now, the third way the market speaks to us is if we have less than 6 to 8 showings, like let's say maybe 3 or 4 in that 3 week to 4 week time frame, and we have no offer, then we're at least 10% high for the market. And here's what I can tell you. We're going to know this, and I'm going to report this to you over the course of the listing period. So it's not going to be a long, drawn-out guessing game as to whether you're going to get to Philadelphia in time for that baby being born. Make sense? Great. Now, from there, we've set expectations, okay? Now, we have to earn the right to ask for a reduction. And what that comes from is we have to commit to communication and a feedback schedule. They have to know up front what we're going to deliver to them so that they feel like we're doing our job. And when we do that, what ends up happening is we're going to commit to feedback, which is going to be once a week, and that feedback is going to be delivered via email. And one of the tools that we're going to use is going to be, we're going to use showing time to get that sent out. And my listing coordinator, Teddy, will send that out to you every Monday. And then you're also going to get a call from us once a week, and it's going to be on Tuesdays. Feedback comes out on Mondays, and then Tuesdays, we're going to have a discussion about it. And then we have to deliver on that. Did we go there? Yep. Now we're going to have to deliver on that. And the way we deliver on that is we're going to use showing time, as I shared, to deliver the feedback. That's going to tell them what the agents, we all know what showing time is, so I don't have to tell you what that is. Weekly update calls to cover number of showings, how many we've had, days on market that we are, what you've been doing to generate, what we've been doing to generate traffic. You know, we've been on 300 plus websites. You guys know that. We syndicate our open house activity and what we're doing daily to find them a buyer. We're going to be delivering that. You know, I was in the office from 8 to 11 making prospecting calls looking for buyers for your home, and that has to be delivered so that they know that we're delivering on our promise. Do you guys know what reverse prospecting numbers are?
Yes.
Yes. So then we use reverse prospecting numbers. What do we use those for?
To reach out to buyers that like your listing and keep them updated on any changes or price decreases or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that we can use reverse prospecting for, what'd that be? Has a seller ever said to you, so what are you doing to sell my home? What are you doing? Reverse prospecting shows us within the last X amount of time, it shows how many agents that we communicated with through the MLS, right? That had a buyer that met their home's criteria, that we were able to get them to send an email to their buyer. Now, yes, it's an automated system, and yet it's our system, right? We can claim ownership of that. So what we do is we're communicating with Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we're communicating with agents all the time, and we're letting them know about your home. even so much so we can tell if one of their agents, if their buyer hearts it, if they like it. Then we can call the agent up and we can offer them a showing on your home. So these are just proactive things.